Hey everyone, welcome to the Python port scanning tutorial. In this tutorial, we will walk through creating a simple Python port scanner that scans multiple target IP addresses for open ports. This script uses the socket and argparse libraries to enable scanning for multiple ports on multiple hosts, making it a useful tool for network administrators and cybersecurity enthusiasts. So what we will learn in this video, you will learn how to parse command line arguments with argparse to specify target IPs and ports, how to use the socket library to attempt connections to each port on each target IP, how to handle errors and timeouts during the scanning process, and how to interpret the results and identify which ports are open or closed. So I'll give you guys a quick demo of how the final script will look like and its functionalities. So I've created the script. If we run it, the script will take the target IP addresses. In here, I've specified 3 IP addresses: 192, 168, 190, 191, and 192. And it will take a range of ports, which in this case I have used 8000, 8001, 8002, then 9000, 9001, and 9002. So if we run this, it will attempt to check whether these ports are open on these IP addresses or not. So in the first section, you can see that on the 192, 168, 190, it was checking for all these 6 ports: 8000, 8001, 8002, 9000, 9001, 9002. So this target IP address of 192, 168, 190, it has 2 ports open, which is 8001 and 8002. And this target, which is 192, 168, 192, it has 1 port open, which is port 9000. This the other IP address, which is 192, 168, 191, it doesn't have any of these ports open. So this is how our script will look like once we are done. So let's get started. The first thing that you have to do is you have to import the socket module. So let's import this. Then we have to specify our target IP address. So we can say target. We create an object. It will hold our IP address. We can say 190. And for the port, we can say, let's say, port 8001. Next, we have to create a socket object. So let's create our socket object. Let's type in. So I'll quickly explain what this code in here, what it does. So what is a socket? A socket is an endpoint for sending or receiving data across a computer network. When 2 computers communicate over a network, each uses a socket to send and receive data. A socket is defined by the combination of an IP address and a port number. The socket module in Python provides a way to interact with network protocols. It allows you to create and work with network connections using sockets. The socket.socket in here that we are using, the socket.socket function is used to create a new socket object in Python. This function takes 2 parameters that define the address family and the socket type for the socket that you're creating. Now the first part in here, I'm using AF INET. So the AF INET stands for address family IPv4. It means the socket will communicate using the IPv4 protocol, which is the most common version of the Internet Protocol. If you wanted to use IPv6 addresses instead, you would use AF_INET6 as the address family. This defines the socket type, which specifies the communication method the socket will use. Next, we are using socket.sock_stream. So sock_stream refers to the TCP, transmission control protocol, which is a connection-oriented protocol. It ensures reliable, ordered, and error-checked delivery of data between applications running on hosts in a network. TCP is used for applications that require reliable bidirectional communication, such as web browsers, file transfers, email, etc. In TCP communication, a connection must be established before data can be sent, and data is guaranteed to be delivered in the correct order without loss. If you wanted to use UDP, which stands for User Datagram Protocol instead, which is a connection-less and less reliable protocol, you would use sock underscore dgram instead of sock underscore stream. Next, we have to set a timeout. So let's set the timeout s dot timeout. We will put in 2 here. So the s dot set timeout dot 2, it sets a timeout for the connection attempt. Set timeout is a method provided by the socket object in Python's socket module. It is used to specify a timeout for socket operations, such as connecting to a remote server or receiving data. This method takes a single argument, a timeout value in seconds, which can be a float for fractional seconds or an integer for whole seconds, which in this case we are using an integer 2. If the socket operation like connect, receive, and send, which we'll see later, doesn't complete within the specified timeout period, a socket timeout exception is raised. So next, let's try a try except block, which catches socket errors and prints an appropriate message if there is a problem at the code. So let's create our try except block. So we can say try. Next, we have to create connect. So use the connect x. So connect x. Then we have to specify the target IP and port. So we have already created objects for the target IP and port. So the connect x method that I am using here, the connect x, it's a method of the socket object in Python. It is similar to connect, but with an important difference. So instead of connect x, we can also use connect, but we will be using connect x. So connect will block. It will wait until a connection is established or an error occurs. Connect x, which we are using on the other hand, it does not block in the same way and instead returns an error code, an integer, instead of raising an exception if an error occurs during the connection attempt. The connectX method, instead of raising an exception on error, returns an error code. It is non-blocking and won't raise an exception, making it more convenient when you want to handle errors in a more controlled way without using try except blocks. It returns 0 if the connection is successful, and a non-zero error code if the connection attempt fails. This makes it easier to check the result of a connection attempt and handle it accordingly. So let's see. Let's click an if else statement. So we say if result is equal to 0. Then we want to print port. So we are taking the port from the port object that we created earlier. And then we can say is open on. Then we have to specify the target IP. Else, if our result code is not equal to 0, then we can say print port. The port number is closed on. We have to specify the target IP. Next, let's create the except part here. So I can say next, if there is a socket error, then we have to print that as well. So we can say error connecting to, then we have to say target IP, and we have to specify the error. Now the except, why do we need the except block? The purpose of the except keyword is used to define a block of code that will be executed if an exception is raised during the execution of the code inside the try block. How it works: if an error occurs in the try block, Python will stop executing the remaining code in the try block and will jump to the corresponding except block. If the error matches the type specified in the except clause, the code in the except block will be executed. And if no error occurs in the except block, it is skipped. Now inside the except block, we are using the socket error here. Now except block socket.error. The purpose of the socket error is that this is a specific exception type that is defined in the socket module. Socket.error is the base class for all exceptions related to socket operations. It is raised when an error occurs during the execution of a socket-related operation, like connecting to a server, sending data, receiving data, etc. Now, common causes, some common scenarios where socket.error might be raised include connection issues, trying to connect to a remote host that is unreachable or refusing connections, or timeouts if a socket operation takes too long and exceeds a set timeout period, or invalid operations, trying to perform socket operations with invalid arguments, for example, trying to bind to an invalid address or port, or maybe resource issues if the system runs out of available sockets or resources. Next, finally, we have to, we can say finally s.close. So if everything goes well, we want to close the socket. So close is a method of the socket object in Python's socket module. It is used to close the socket, releasing any system resources associated with it. Closing a socket is an important step to ensure that no further operations can be performed on that socket and that all the resources like file descriptors or network buffers are properly freed. Why close a socket? So why should we close it? Resource management. This can be one reason. So operating systems, they allocate system resources such as file descriptors to each socket that is created. If a socket is not closed properly, these resources might not be released, potentially causing resource leaks, which could eventually exhaust the available resources, leading to errors or performance issues, or preventing errors. So once a socket is closed, no further communication can be performed on it. For example, you can't send or receive data after closing the socket. This is useful when you're done with network communication and want to ensure that the socket is properly terminated. Graceful shutdown. Closing the socket ensures that any data buffered for transmission is flashed or sent and the connection is terminated gracefully. So this is especially important in client-server communication using protocols like TCP. So after we are done with this, let's see if the script is saved. So let's quickly run this. So we can say Python scan, we can run it. So we get an error, none type object is not callable. So let's quickly look at this. 192.168, what is the error here? So we are defining our port. Next, we are creating our socket.socket, and we are setting the timeout. Inside the try block, we are connecting to the target. Then we are checking for the result. If result is equal to 0, then we are searching for the error connecting to. And finally, so in here we are getting an error. So it says on line 8. So on line 8 is our timeout. Non-type object is not callable. Okay, this is correct. So it's not timeout, it's set timeout. So we have to, I forgot to type on the set, so let's quickly run it again. So in here you can see that on 192, 168, 190, port 8001, it is open. So if we try another port, let's say port number 10,001, and we run this, so if we run it here, we can see that port 10,001, it is closed. So it says port 10,001, it is closed. So this is it for this tutorial, guys. In the next tutorial, I will show you guys how to use the argparse module to take this target IP address which we want to scan. We want to take it from the command line argument. So we want to pass the target as an argument to the script here. So let's say we want to scan 192, 190. So we want to pass it to the script like this. In the next tutorial, I will show you how to use the argparse module to pass the target IP address to the script. So if you have any questions, I'll put it in the comment section below. And if you found this tutorial useful, please do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of the Python network scanner tutorial. In this tutorial, I will show you guys how to use the argparse module to take the target IP address and the port number as an argument to the script. So let's get started. The first thing that we have to do is import the argparse module. So let's import it. Once we have imported the module, then we have to start or set up the argument parsing. So let's create our parser object. So we can say parser argparse dot argument parser, and then give it a description. The description, we can say scan a specific port on a target IP address. So the argparse module is a standard Python library used for parsing the command line arguments. It makes it easy to write user-friendly command line interface and helps you handle arguments passed to your script when it's run from the terminal. It provides an easy way to define the expected arguments for a script and parse them into usable Python objects. This is commonly used for creating tools and utilities that are run from the command line. The argument parser class in here that we can see, this one, it's an argument parser. It's a class in the argparse module that is used to create an argument parser object. The parser is responsible for reading the command line arguments, validating them, and converting them into a format that your program can work with. Argument parser is typically the first step in setting up command line argument parsing. The object you create will manage all of the command line arguments you define later on in your script. The description, this is a keyword argument passed to the argument parser. We're talking about the description. It's passed to the argument parser constructor to provide a description of what the program does. The description will be displayed when the user runs the script with the h or dash help option. It is a short human readable string that explains the purpose or functionality of the program. When you run the script with the h or dash help option, argparse will print out the description along with other details like the available arguments, their types, and usage. So next, let's add the arguments. So we can say parser dot add underscore argument. So we will provide two arguments. The first one will be the target IP. We will specify a type for it, and for the help we can say something like target IP address scan. Next, let's create another argument. This one will take in the port, so we can say port, and for the type this will also be str, and for the help we type in port number to scan. So parser.add underscore argument. The purpose of this method is used to define a command line argument that the script will accept when it is run. It tells argparse what kind of argument the program expects, how it should be processed, and what information should be displayed in the help message. In the earlier code provided, parser it's an instance of the argument parser class from the argparse module. Add argument is a method used on this argument parser object to specify the details of the arguments that the program will accept from the command line. And now for the first one, we specified the target IP, and for the second one, we have specified the port number. So it's ports or target IP, it's the name of the argument that's being defined. This is the positional argument that the user will provide when running the script. In this case, the arguments represent the target IP or the port that will be scanned. The user will need to specify which ports they want the script to check. Next, we have specified the type, and the type is str, which stands for string. So str, the type of argument, specifies the data type that the argument or that the command line argument should be converted to. In this case, the type is str, which is string, meaning that the value provided by the user will be treated as a string. So why string? The user will input a comma separated, as we saw in the first tutorial, a comma separated list of ports. And as a string, the input can easily be parsed and split into individual components later in the script. If you are scanning a single port or a numeric value, integer or int could be used as the type, but here str allows flexibility in representing multiple ports in a list-like format as a string. Then we have help here. So the help, it's a help message. The help argument is an optional argument string. It describes that what this argument does, what it is for. This text will be displayed in the help message when the user runs this script with the h or the dash help option. I'll show you guys in a few seconds how that works. Next, we have to parse the command line arguments that are being passed. So in order to parse them, we have to first create it. So I would say args. We have to create args on object. We'll call it args. Then we will create a parser, which is parse underscore args. So once we do that, then the target IP address and target port. So this time we don't have to hard code the target IP address. We can take it from our parser. So we can say args dot target IP. So args is the parser that we created, and target IP is what you will take as a positional argument when we run this script. Next, we have to specify the ports. So args is our parser, and we take port as a positional argument. So let's save it. Let's quickly come here type in 2. So if you can type in -h, we can see that scan a specific port on a target IP address. So you can change it to IP address. This is this part here, guys. Scan a specific port on a target IP address, and then we have to help commands here for the positional arguments, target IP address to scan and port numbers to scan. So we can say target IP and port, target IP address to scan and port number to scan. So these are the places where the help section and the description comes into play. So let's quickly run this. So we can say Python 3 02, and then we can specify the IP. So we can say 190, and we can say 8000. Again, str object cannot be interpreted as an integer. So again, this time when you are trying to run this, it is saying it cannot be done that. So for this, my apologies, we have to change this to int. So in here, so I could quickly show you guys the port number. In here it was str. In here on line 17, which the error displayed, in here we are using port number, the port number in here. So let's quickly run this again this time, so we can see that it says port 8000 is open. So let's type in port something like 8121. In here this port is closed, so it says port 8121 is closed on 192.168.119. So this is it for this tutorial, guys. In the next tutorial we will see how to take a range of ports. So for now I can only scan one port number. So in case we want to scan multiple ports, how do we do that? So that's something that we will see in the next tutorial. And we have to also add in another functionality so that we could add in multiple target IP address. For now being, I can only target a single port on a single target IP. So guys, if you have any questions, please put it in the comment section below. And if you found this tutorial useful, please do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Hey everyone, welcome to part 3 of the Python network scanner tutorial. In this tutorial, we will see how to take in multiple ports to scan. So in the previous tutorial, we saw how to take a single IP address and a single port number to scan. In this tutorial, we will see how to take multiple port numbers as an input to the script. Then we will scan, go and iterate over each and every single port, and we will scan each and every one of them. So the first thing that you have to do in here, we have to change the type of this. So we will be changing integer from integer to str, string. Next, we have to, since we will be receiving not one port but multiple ports, let's change it from port to ports. Let's change the object here as well. So how will we be passing the port numbers? So let's say we want to scan ports 9000, 9001, and 9002. So this is how we will pass the port numbers to the script using comma separated values. So we have to split it. We have to split these port numbers using the commas. So how do we do that? We can say args.ports.split. Split using what? The commas, since we are passing in our port numbers in a comma separated here. So we have to get rid of these commas, and we have to split them using these comma values. So we get 9000, 9001, 9002, and we will put this in our list. Without this, we don't need the commas. So once we have done that, next what we have to do is let's create a list, so an empty list. So we can call it list of ports. So list of ports, guys, it's an empty list. For now being, doesn't have anything. So once we iterate over these port numbers, we will be stripping the white spaces and we will be converting them to integers because we have changed it to str. So we will change it back to integer, and then we will append it to this list. So we have to iterate over the ports that we will be receiving as a command line argument. So we say for port and ports. So for whatever port that we receive, let's first clean it. So we will say clean port, and we will say port dot strip. So what will it do? Port dot strip will remove any leading or trailing white spaces. So let's say, let's quickly see this. So let's say our port numbers that we are passing, it has a leading white space like we have in here, or it has a leading white space and also a trailing white space. So a split that we are using, the strip that we are using here, it will strip the white spaces. So it will get rid of the white spaces and the leading and the trailing white spaces. Once we have done that, next we have to convert it into an integer. So next we can say port number, then we can say integer clean port. So we are converting this port number into an integer, and we are saving into a new object called port number. Next we have to append this port into the append this port into our list. So our list is here, it's list of ports in here. So currently it's empty. So what we have to do next is we have to append it. So list of ports dot append. So we want to append what? We want to append the port number. So as we go over each port number, we are stripping the leading and trailing white spaces. We are converting it into an integer, and then we are appending it to our ports. Okay, so this is done here, this part. We are done with this part. So once we do that, we have appended all the ports into our list here. Next, what we have to do is, let's put this port in here into a function. So let's quickly create a function. So we will call our function scan port. So for the scan port, our scan port function will take two arguments. It will take an IP address and a port number. So let's indent this code. In here we are connecting, so it takes the target IP and port, so we have to change it to whatever we receive in here. So we can change it IP. So this is the IP. Next, the port, it's the same, the port number. So our function will take an IP address and a port. After taking in the IP address, it will scan it. I've already explained this part. So next we have to iterate over the list of ports in here. So we have appended, and all of whatever port that we pass into the script, it will be stored in this list. So we have to iterate over this list. So we can say for port in list of ports. After we go over each one of these ports, we are passing it to our function. So our function is called scan port, and we say for this, the first one will be the target IP, and the second one will be port that we are going over. So we go over each port, and then we are passing it to our script. The target IP is being taken from the command line argument. So let's quickly run this. So we can say Python tree. Let's run that. So if we can say 192.168.192. So instead of scanning one port, let's say we will scan 9000, 9001, and 9002. So all these three. So once we have run over that, so we can see that in here 192.168.192. In here, the port 9000, it's open. 9001 and 9002, these two ports, these are closed. So out of these three ports, only the first one, 9001, is open. So this is it for this tutorial, guys. In the next tutorial, you will see how to scan multiple IPs instead of one IP. So if you have any question, please put it in the comment section below. And if you found this tutorial useful, please do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Hey everyone, welcome to part 4 of the Python network scanner tutorial. In this tutorial, we will see how to take multiple target IPs from the command line argument. And in the previous tutorial, we saw how to take multiple port numbers. But in the previous tutorial, we saw that we could only target one specific IP address. So in this tutorial, we will see how to take multiple IP address as target. So let's get started. Now the first thing that we have to do is, instead of saying you are getting a target IP, so we are getting target IPs. So let's change this, target IPs and target IPs. Again, we have to split it. We have to split it using the commas, because the target IP addresses will be separated by the commas. So after you're done with that, let's create a list of IPs, and this list initially it is empty, just like the list of ports. Next, let's go over this target IPs. So we can say for IP and target IPs. So for this one, we have to again clean out any leading and trailing spaces. So we can say cleaned IP is equal to IP.strip. So it cleans or clears or deletes, we can say, any white spaces that appear at the beginning or the end of the IP address. Next, we have to append this. So once we have stripped it, we have cleaned the white spaces. The next thing we have to do is, just like in the previous for loop in here, we have added the ports to the list of ports. This time we have to add the IP addresses to the list of IPs. Currently the list is empty, so we can say list of IPs dot append, and for that we can say cleaned IP. So it will append the IPs, the target IP addresses to this list. So once this is done, next, so we have to use our for loop. So for the for loop, this time we have to create another one here. So we can say for IP, and you will get this list of IPs, and let's indent this. Let's save the code. So it will go over all the IP addresses. After going over all the IP addresses, it will go over the port numbers and it will scan it. So let's quickly run this script. So instead of target IP, it's target IPs. Sorry, so in here we can say it's IP. So let's run this. So in here we can say Python tree. We are scanning tree hosts, just like as we saw in the first part of this tutorial: 192.168.190, 192.168.191, 192.168, 192, and sorry, this is 4 targets, so 192.168, 193. So you're scanning 4 target IPs, and we are looking for these port numbers like 8000, 8001, 9000, 9001, 9002. So let's run this. Okay. Okay, it says we are getting an error. So what's this error? It says name error, name target IP is not defined. That you mean target IPs? Yes, we have changed it. So this is the IP here. Let's change it to IP, save it, clear it. Let's run it one more time. So in here we can see that it has scanned this first portion here. This is the 192.168.190 host. Of all the 5 port, it has only one, the 8001 port open. So the second one, 192.168.191, all the ports that we wanted to target, 8000, 8001, 9000, 9001, 9002, all of them closed. Next, the third target, which is 192.168.192. In here, you can see that only one port, which is port number 9000, it's open. The rest, they are all closed. And 192.168.193, all those 5 ports, they are closed. So this is it for this tutorial, guys. This is how you can create create a script that can take in multiple IP addresses and multiple ports and scan them. Now this in here, so let me delete this part. So we have created these two for loops that goes over the IP addresses and the ports. However, we can simplify this. So we can create a one-liner that will do all this coding for us. So instead of having all these 5-6 lines of code, we can have one line of code and it will do all this functionality that these lines perform. We can all bring it down to just a simple single line. So that's something that we will see in the next tutorial. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment section below. And if you found this tutorial useful, please do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Hey everyone, welcome to part 5 of the Python network scanner tutorial. So in the previous tutorial, we saw how to create this simple script that will take in multiple IP addresses and multiple port numbers, and it will scan to check if those ports are open. Now in this tutorial, we will see how to simplify this code. So these lines of code in here, we can just get rid of them and we can just put them in a single line. So how do we do that? It's very simple. So in here, for the target IPs, let's first start with the target IPs. So what we can do, let's just delete all of this. For the target IPs, we can say IP dot strip, and then we can say for IP n args dot target underscore IPs dot split, and we are splitting by the commas. So it will split the target IPs, it will store them in IP, and it will strip. What it means is that it will remove all the white spaces from the beginning and end of the IP addresses. We can do the same thing with the ports. However, with the ports, we have to also convert it into int. So first we type in int because we want to convert the result into an integer. So we can say port dot strip, and after that we can say for port n args dot ports, and then for after that we can say split, and we are splitting by the comma. So once that we have done this, we really don't need all these lines of code. So next we can say that for IP and list of IPs. So we can say for IP and target IPs, because this is where we're getting our target IPs, and this is where our ports are. So target IPs and ports. So we don't need those lists anymore. So we can create, so we can use our objects from here, the target IPs and ports. We don't need those separate lists that we created previously. So let's quickly run this again. Python, let's do this. So instead, this time we're running the script, this one. So in here again, it's scanning all those target IP addresses. So again, for this one, we can see 192.168.190. Only one port is open, which is port number 8001. For 192.168.191, all ports are closed that we wanted to scan. For 192.168.192, only port 9000 is open. And for the last one, last target, is 192.168.193. All 5 of these ports, 8000, 8001, 9000, 9001, and 9002, all these ports are closed. So this is it for this tutorial, guys. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment section below. And if you found this tutorial useful, please do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.